Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. Former President Trump won't be posting on Facebook anytime soon. But now that he has his own platform, it's easier to share his messages. We tell you what he has to say about the most recent decision on his Facebook account. Trump allies are starting a new group to protect election integrity. Jenna Ellis, Ken Paxton, and Peter Navarro are chairing the new organization. Some parents in Arizona are forming their own school board after a local school board prevented them from challenging the mask mandate. One of the meeting attendees tells NTD what happened. A marriage expert tells us more about Bill Gates' divorce and how their separation could have a large-scale impact on others. A world-renowned infectious disease expert has died of the CCP virus during a short trip to India. This as India struggles to deal with the overwhelming virus surge. It's been close to 4 months since former President Trump has been banned on Facebook. According to the social media giant, it may take another 6 months to decide his fate on the platform. Here's more on that.
Former President Trump will continue to be blocked on Facebook for up to another 6 months. A so-called independent oversight board decided to uphold Trump's suspension from the platform. The board consists of 20 people who are all on Facebook's payroll.
What we have to ask ourselves is who's on the board, what is their motivation, and why is it they are trying to silence someone's free speech?
There is some doubt as to whether this quasi-independent body is truly independent, as it is packed with powerful progressives and Democrats, including the former editor-in-chief of The Guardian, who is also part of leftist George Soros's Open Society project. The former president just announced that he will be communicating directly to the world using his own platform in a blog-style format called From the Desk of Donald J. Trump. The former president made a statement through his own channel on the Facebook decision and said in part, "These corrupt social media companies must pay a political price and must never again be allowed to destroy and decimate our electoral process." Doug Wade, CEO of social media platform Pure Social, says that Facebook using this oversight board is more of a cover. He says it's not necessary to put on such a spectacle.
Well, I think their basic policies are pretty clear. They seem to be overriding those policies to make exceptions, and that's the problem right now, which really isn't just Facebook. It's the other big tech platforms as well, YouTube and Twitter.
The oversight board did slightly push back against Facebook, saying that the company should review their decision and justify a proportionate response, implying that a permanent ban against the former president may be neither justified nor proportionate. Steve Lance, NTD News, Washington, D.C.
Today, a group of election integrity activists and friends of former President Trump launched the Election Integrity Alliance with the goal to end election fraud. The new alliance is chaired by Jenna Ellis. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, alongside former Trump advisor Peter Navarro, are co-chairmen. They will focus on ending election fraud and strengthening election safeguards. This is part of a string of organizations launched since the November 3rd election. Stephen Miller founded America First, legal to push back against Biden's policies. Then there's Brooke Rollins and Larry Kudlow's America First Policy Institute and Ben Carson's American Cornerstone Institute. The nonprofit American Greatness Fund that launched the latest alliance declares that only through election integrity can our American government operate according to its limited and legitimate role in civil society. And Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney is forced to give a defense for why she's bucking party lines and not supporting former President Trump. Top Republican leaders are rooting to replace her seat as conference chair, and Trump today fully endorsed another Congresswoman to replace her. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says he's lost confidence in Cheney. She voted to impeach President Trump and denies allegations of election fraud. Both McCarthy and Republican whip Steve Scalise have suggested Representative Elise Stefanik from New York should take Cheney's position as conference chair because they say she's dedicated to fighting against Speaker Pelosi and President Biden's radical socialist agenda. Former President Trump chimed in on the matter, endorsing Stefanik and calling Representative Cheney a warmonger who has virtually no support left in the great state of Wyoming. Next week, the House GOP is expected to start the process to oust Cheney. The Labor Department blocked a Trump-era rule on gig workers. The rule made it easier to classify gig workers who work for companies like Uber and Lyft as independent contractors instead of employees. But now this may no longer be the case.
The reversal doesn't change gig workers' current employment status, but it signals a potential policy shift towards gig economies. Gig workers are independent contractors who perform on-demand services like driving, delivering groceries, or providing childcare. Shares of companies that employ gig labor paired gains. At the closing of New York Stock Exchange, Lyft was down nearly 7%, DoorDash fell nearly 5%, and Uber shares traded down around 3%. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh said by withdrawing the independent contractor rule, it will help preserve essential worker rights. Research shows that nearly 30% of workers are self-employed in America. The Trump administration said their rule made it easier for Americans to set their own hours and self-employ. But with this reversal, advocacy groups are concerned this means the current administration wants to broadly reclassify and restructure the workforce.
This is a sweeping reform that they're aiming to do, and they point to the gig workers and the gig economy, but 30% of the American workforce aren't working for these tech or app companies.
Employees are better positioned than contractors to organize into labor unions, and the Biden administration has prioritized creating union jobs with the Build Back Better plan.
It's very much quid pro quo for the unions. They can't unionize independent contractors. So if they change their status to employee status, they now have the opportunity to organize those workplaces. And nobody is asking for protections from self-employment.
Walsh told Reuters last week that his department would have conversations with companies to make sure gig labor have access to consistent wages, sick time, and health care. Lin Lin, NTD News.
A federal judge in Washington, D.C. has tossed the eviction moratorium preventing landlords around the country from evicting tenants due to hardship caused by the CCP virus. The moratorium has been a contentious issue among landlords around the country who say this loophole has been taken advantage of by opportunistic tenants. This measure was put in place by Congress following the CCP virus outbreak. The measure would allow tenants to stay in an apartment without paying rent, leaving landlords with no recourse to evict. Landlords have argued it's an unfair burden to not be able to evict tenants while they still have mortgages and property taxes to pay. The CDC extended the ban until June 30th back in March, but the court said the CDC does not have the authority to impose a nationwide eviction moratorium. And parents in Arizona are not happy with the mask mandates at school. They stood up to a school board to voice their concerns. NTD's Christina Kim has more on what happened.
In April, Arizona's governor removed the statewide mask mandate for K-12 schools. He gave districts the option to implement their own policies. In late April, hundreds of parents in Vail, Arizona, stood up to the school board for mandating that students wear masks to school. They initially gathered to speak to the board about why they believed students should be able to go maskless, but the school board adjourned the meeting and left.
We just wanted to come and present a speech. Would you please listen to that?
Steve Daniels, pro tem chairman of the Patriot Party of Arizona, who was at the board meeting, says because the board went home, they decided to elect their own board per Robert's Rules of Order.
Based on Robert's Rules of Order, which is how you conduct meetings from a parliamentary standpoint, if they've abandoned their post effectively, if they've left and resigned, then the parents of that school district could call, based on having a quorum, could call a meeting to order and elect a new school board. So that's what we did.
The newly elected group then voted to get rid of the mask mandates.
I motion that the entire Vail School District will be free of mask policy and it will be optional to all teachers and students alike with no fear of retribution.
Vail board members called this a media stunt and says the board can't be recognized because it has no authority. Daniel says that's not true. The parents didn't call the sheriff or the media. They just went to speak to the board, which they weren't able to do. As to whether this new board is legitimate, Daniel says it's up to the court to decide.
This is the parents of that district, the voters, the taxpayers, the people of that district that decided that they did not like the way that their current elected government was operating, so they decided to remove them and install a new government. and I'm on board with that. I think they should start operating accordingly. Now, that can be decided in court.
But the larger message is about standing up to protect freedom, according to Daniels.
I've had hundreds and hundreds of people and thousands of comments on those videos of people saying they fully support this and want to see this happen everywhere.
Daniels says the mask mandate is really about control and submission, not public health. He says there's strength in numbers and that Americans should stand up for their freedom and liberty and fight against what he calls a tyrannical, communist-style rule. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is committing to funding the police in his state. Today, he announced a plan to give first responders in Florida a $1,000 bonus. DeSantis said lately police, firefighters, and EMTs have had to work harder than they ever have. He says that's partly because they've been protecting people during the pandemic. The governor said the way police have been treated in parts of the country over the last year is a disgrace. The crowd cheered when DeSantis mentioned how he asked state lawmakers to give bonuses to law enforcement. He said, quote, "Some want to defund the police. We want to fund the police, and then some." Texas lawmakers are currently looking at 2 election integrity-related bills. They haven't passed the bills yet, but major corporations are already coming out against the proposed election reforms. NTD's Allison Lee has the details.
Over 50 corporations and business organizations, including American Airlines, Microsoft, Hewlett-Packard, and multiple Texas chambers of commerce, are coming out against proposed election reforms in Texas. In an open letter on Tuesday, they urged Texas lawmakers to oppose election bills that, according to them, would make ballots less accessible. But they are not naming any specific legislation. And separately, another coalition of over 170 business leaders in Texas also signed an open letter on Monday. They are criticizing 2 major election reform bills state lawmakers are currently considering. 2 bills would put in place tighter restrictions on mail-in ballots, criminalize sending unsolicited mail-in ballot applications, ban drive-through polling places, increase criminal penalties for fraud, and grant greater access to poll watchers. One of the bills already passed the Senate, and the House could vote on it as soon as this week. Texas Republicans introduced both bills. They believe the reforms would make elections more secure. The business coalitions criticized the bills as voter suppression. This is hardly the first time major corporations have come out against Republican-led election reform bills. In early April, a coalition of over 200 corporations signed a joint statement opposing bills that they say would make voting more difficult. Allison Lee, NTD News.
Bill Gates' plan to divorce his wife gained worldwide attention, with many people unsure of what the new change will bring. One marriage expert says the impact goes beyond him and his wife. NTD's Don Tran reports.
In an announcement that shocked the world, former Microsoft CEO Bill Gates said he was splitting with his wife after 27 years of marriage. Relationship expert and CEO of Marriage Helper Kimberly Holmes said their decision is heartbreaking.
It is really difficult to see that they have said that they just can't see themselves growing together in the future and that they believe they would be better apart than together. I believe that this is not a smart thing for them to do. I believe that the best thing for them to do is to try and work this out and stay together.
The former couple jointly ran the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It was founded in 1994 and has issued grant payments of nearly $55 billion. Despite the divorce, Bill and Melinda said they will continue to grow together at their foundation. But Holmes said their divorce will have a negative effect on their children and their work at the foundation.
Here's the thing. Something was broken about their relationship so much that they have decided to divorce. You can't remove that by just being in a boardroom versus a bedroom. It is still going to be there. And so unless they figure that out, then people in the company will feel like they need to choose sides. There's going to be issues with splitting the money. Even if they're amicable, there are still issues that haven't been worked out, and it's going to show up.
Holmes also said Gates' decision runs contrary to his foundation's goal of uplifting children in developing countries. That's because she says uplifting children begins in the home, with a strong family foundation with 2 committed parents. Ultimately, she says his divorce sets a bad example for the rest of the country.
The fact that Bill and Melinda Gates are divorcing and everyone is seeing this, yes, I do believe that it shows Americans that this is an option when it shouldn't be an option for most people. Marriages can be saved. You can work through it. That's what we need to see.
The Gates Foundation issued a statement to Recode which said no changes were planned for the organization or for Bill or Melinda Gates' roles. Don Tran, NTD News.
U.S. lawmakers met with the family who inspired a law that extends the maximum sentence for stalking convictions involving minors on Tuesday. The Zezo family says there's still many gaps in the law, and they're calling for more to be done to protect children from predators, like the one who stalked their daughter Madison for 4 years, beginning when she was just 13 years old. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
What the Zezo family made clear today is that so many of these laws are antiquated and outdated, and especially when it comes to protecting children online. Although technology is progressing rapidly, many of these laws are not keeping pace.
The family brought up the role of social media companies. They said that to this day, numerous posts made by the man who stalked Madison remain online. This includes images of her face photoshopped onto women's bodies, posed in sexual positions. But despite contacting the platforms multiple times, the social media giants haven't removed the posts.
I mean, I even attached the case, the judge's response, the case numbers, everything to one of them and said that this individual has committed a crime. Here's the evidence of that crime. Here's the account names that I know about. Please get these removed, and heard nothing.
At present, social media companies are not required by law to remove such posts. The Zezos say if a predator is convicted, social media companies should be required to remove the posts immediately. Madison said it's extremely frustrating to see how quickly tweets can be censored or taken down if they're deemed misinformation, while posts made by her convicted stalker that make her feel extremely uncomfortable aren't taken down.
As Madison pointed out, we've seen that if they disagree with a statement, they don't have any qualms about putting a stamp on it or even taking it down entirely. Well, what about a criminal who's actively stalking someone? Shouldn't that meet the criteria for that post to be taken down?
The lawmakers told the Zezo family they'll look into the issue seriously and work towards a solution. Mr. and Mrs. Zezo say that now children are spending more time online for remote learning. There's never been a more urgent time to act. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
The defense attorney for former police officer Derek Chauvin is asking for a new trial on multiple grounds, including jury misconduct. Chauvin was convicted in April of George Floyd's murder. NTD's Christina Kim has that story.
Attorney Eric Nelson filed a request to a Minnesota court Tuesday, arguing that Chauvin should be granted a new trial. The former officer was found guilty of second-degree and third-degree murder, as well as second-degree manslaughter for the death of George Floyd. Nelson argues Chauvin was not granted a fair trial, and this violated his constitutional rights. He says the conviction was tainted by misconduct from the prosecution and the jury, that there were errors of law at trial, and that the verdict was contrary to law. He alleges a number of issues impacted the outcome of the trial. For example, the court refused to move the trial out of Minnesota, where Floyd died, even though Nelson argued concerns of a tainted jury pool. He also mentions the jury was not isolated during the trial, and they were exposed to the extreme publicity surrounding the case. There was a lot of media attention surrounding the trial. Notably, Representative Maxine Waters flew to Minnesota to participate in a protest where she urged people to get more confrontational. But juror number 52, Brandon Mitchell, has since done public interviews and claims the jury didn't know anything about that. Nelson says the verdict should be impeached because the jury committed misconduct, felt threatened or intimidated, felt race-based pressure, and or failed to follow the instructions during deliberations. The request comes days after prosecutors filed a legal brief arguing that Chauvin should be given a higher sentence due to a series of what they say are aggravating factors. Under Minnesota law, Chauvin faces a maximum of 40 years in prison. Christina Kim, NTD News.
People are getting creative to ramp up those vaccinations. Biden, for one, is talking about sports ticket giveaways and discounts. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story and more on why people are turning down the jab.
They're giving away $50 prepaid debit cards in Michigan, free beer in New Jersey, and even joints in Washington, all to encourage people to get vaccinated against COVID-19. President Biden has his methods, working with grocery stores and sports leagues.
Ticket giveaways, in-stadium vaccination programs, discounts on merchandise.
But will this really bring in the not yet vaccinated?
How well will these incentives work at getting people vaccinated?
For people who are skeptical about the government and safety, they're not going to work very well.
Amy Baxter, CEO of Pain Care Labs, says it'll work for some, like the over 50% of people who said they were afraid of needles in one of their surveys.
For them, they just need a little bit to tip them over the edge one way or the other. So for that group, pain management or incentives or business benefits actually may play a big part.
Baxter's company works to make getting a shot less painful through their products. It's an issue, she says, the CDC isn't taking seriously enough. But besides this, people also turn the vaccine down for religious or philosophical reasons, which may not have anything to do with hesitancy. According to Pew Research Center, 36% of Protestants said they definitely or probably won't get vaccinated. Detroit launched its Good Neighbor program about a week ago. The city is giving people $50 prepaid debit cards for each person they bring in to get vaccinated. We contacted them to see how well the program is doing, but we haven't heard back. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
A world-renowned infectious disease expert and Rutgers professor died of the virus in India. This as India faces nearly 20,000 CCP virus deaths just in the first week of May. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
According to the New Indian Express, Dr. Rajendra Kapila and his wife received both doses of the Pfizer vaccine before traveling to India in March. They were supposed to return to America in April, but Kapila was hospitalized after he contracted the virus. He later died. India has been grappling with a giant surge in CCP virus cases and deaths. As a result, mortuary vans can no longer wait for the bodies to be cremated. There are reportedly lines of vans dumping dead bodies at the cremation sites before going back to pick up more bodies. The director of United Sikhs, Parvinder Singh, says many cremation sites have long lines, and there is an hours-long wait time for a body to be cremated. Singh talks about a recent experience administering oxygen to a family's dying son.
And he died in my hands itself. That scene is not going from my eyes, and day out, day in.
Singh says his heart goes out to the people of India who haven't received proper medical treatment for the virus.
It's haunting me like anything that we are not able to provide sufficient health facilities to our people in India. That's really, really difficult situation we are facing right now.
Germany flew in medical supplies to India to help with the dire situation.
We are very proud that it was possible to gather and prepare the aid for India in such a short time, and to send it today to where it's most needed.
Reuters reported that India's COVID-19 cases might peak between May 3rd and May 5th, and the University of Washington's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation predicted India will have over 1 million deaths by August 1st. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Coming up, Governor Andrew Cuomo is extending voting rights for felons. Now people on parole can be eligible to vote as soon as they leave prison. And New York City schools are making changes. From now on, classrooms will handle Columbus Day and snow days differently. Find out more in just a minute. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has just signed a bill expanding voting rights for felons. This as other Democrat-led states are also expanding voting access for felons. According to the state legislature, the bill will allow felons to be eligible to vote as soon as they leave prison, even if they're on parole. Before, parolees would have to wait between 4 to 6 weeks to receive a pardon, and then they'd have to register to vote on their own. Now, Department of Corrections officials will now be required to provide a voter registration form as the felon leaves the facility. This would essentially automatically get parolees registered to vote. The law goes into effect immediately, except some parts won't go into effect until 120 days after the signing of the bill. And things are opening up across the U.S. In most areas, schools and businesses are increasing gradually, but not for baseball in New York City. NTD's Arian Pazdar has the story.
New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo announced that capacities for the baseball stadiums of the New York Yankees and the Mets will go from 20% all the way to 100%, but not for everyone.
Normal capacity, normal seating for people who are vaccinated.
The sections for unvaccinated people will be raised to 33% capacity. Fans can get vaccinated at the stadium before the game and will receive a free ticket for another game as an incentive for getting the shot. The Yankees thanked the governor for his decision and said they're happy to encourage more people to get vaccinated by giving away game tickets. The governor also said Broadway theaters will reopen at 100% capacity in September. Broadway shows will resume ticket sales this month for the fall 2021 performances. Arian Pazdar, NTD News, New York.
And we have more New York City news from Arian. New York City schools are no longer celebrating Columbus Day, but kids will still have the day off. The holiday will get a new name.
New York City public schools aren't celebrating Columbus Day anymore, but they will still take the day off. But instead of celebrating Columbus Day, they will from now on celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day and Italian Heritage Day. But according to historians and educators, Christopher Columbus is an important part of American culture.
We should honor him as we have in the past. We should honor him in the future.
He is a pivotal figure. He also represents all the great qualities of a man of his time, someone who sought to spread the word of Christianity, who was an explorer, who was adventurous, who was curious, who was persistent, and he rose from very humble roots to do that. So he's sort of the prototype of the American.
The City Department of Education made the decision to get rid of Columbus Day without consulting other city officials.
This process wasn't handled right. I certainly didn't hear about the change, nor did the chancellor.
And city officials weren't the only ones who were left out of the decision-making.
Public of New York certainly ought to be able to speak loudly to defend Columbus, to simply have any input in the process whatsoever.
These schools are also getting rid of snow days. Now if the snow's too heavy, students will have to learn from home. Arian Pazdar, NTD News, New York.
Coming up, San Francisco is expecting to see more in-state visitors as it opens more and tourism leaders urge residents to boost California's tourism industry. And residents of San Diego County may soon be covering the cost of lawyers for illegal immigrants. The legal counsel will be available to border crossers who are detained and facing deportation. That and more here on NTD News.
This is such a gentle painting, so beautifully portrayed.
A group of people reading together in this simple, everyday-looking living room. A young girl reading along with an adult, a grandparent sitting in the lotus position, a businessman in his typical suit.
You see all those people, they look like they have quietly settled down there. And you as a viewer, it looks like you've just stepped in the door.
You can't see what it is they're reading, so you're a little bit curious and you're kind of invited to walk in.
This harmonious feeling is not by accident. It is the very subject of the work. The book they are reading is the main text of Falun Gong, which is an ancient Chinese spiritual discipline in the Buddhist tradition. At the core of Falun Gong are the values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Unfortunately, the practice is banned in China, where the artist resides. Thousands have been killed for their faith. Golden energy blooms into the room as a result of their steadfast faith. The painting on the back wall reminds us of this work's title, Plum Blossoms in a Muddy World.
It's also a metaphor for the practitioners that are sitting in the room as plum blossoms.
They signify perseverance and hope that all brutal winters end and life is renewed once again.
It's a magical painting.
A popular tourist destination may soon be back to normal again as San Francisco receives the okay to open up more. And all Californians are encouraged to take their vacation in the state. Here's NTD's Eileen Ang with more.
Yesterday, San Francisco officially transitioned to its least restrictive stage in the state's reopening map. The mayor announced that starting tomorrow, more activities like indoor bars, indoor family entertainment, outdoor sporting events, and indoor saunas can reopen. Restrictions for previous openings like fitness, dining, and offices will loosen, so locals will likely be seeing more visitors.
California may also see more in-state visitors. Tourism leaders are encouraging residents to invest in their home states and boost the tourism industry.
It's important to start normalizing things again, of course, safely. I would suggest that it's a good idea as long as people are vaccinated and as long as people follow the protocols and wear masks.
They also have an idea where they would travel first in the state.
Yosemite Park, it's beautiful and, it's more spread out. So yeah, I would definitely go Yosemite, maybe LA.
Santa Cruz is a place that I would like to go. I love Monterey, which is another place that I will go. And of course, San Francisco. I'm hoping that the museums open in San Francisco so I can go visit.
A few other counties in Northern California and Los Angeles County are also in the least restrictive yellow tier regulations, while most of California still has slightly more restrictions. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
California authorities arrested a saloon owner for selling fake COVID-19 vaccination cards. NTD's David Lamb has the story.
According to the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control, or ABC, they've arrested the owner of Old Corner Saloon for selling fake vaccination cards. The department began investigating after receiving a complaint saying the bar is selling counterfeit vaccine cards. Old Corner Saloon is located along California's Highway 88. Undercover agents were able to buy several cards in April. The bar reportedly sold the cards for $20 apiece, and they were able to sell at least 8 in the past few weeks. Vaccination cards are intended to show what kind of COVID-19 vaccine one has taken, and the dates of the doses. California updated its mask guidance on Monday. Fully vaccinated people don't have to wear masks when they hang out with one another indoors or outdoors, except in certain cases. They also don't have to wear masks when visiting non-vaccinated people indoors from a single household. ABC says they'll file disciplinary action against the bar. They can potentially suspend or revoke its alcohol license. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Taxpayers in San Diego County may soon be footing the bill for more lawyers, but not their own. The extra legal counsel will be provided to illegal immigrants who are in federal custody and facing deportation. Here are the details.
The San Diego County Board of Supervisors voted 3-2 on Tuesday to set up a $5 million program to cover the cost of lawyers to represent illegal immigrants held at the Otay Mesa Detention Center in San Diego. Those in custody would have access to lawyers at no cost to them through the county's public defender's office.
Our justice system should be based on facts and on law, not on access to wealth and resources. So when we see inequality like this, inequality that runs contrary to rights guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution and upheld by the Supreme Court, we must take action.
Santa Clara and Los Angeles County have adopted similar measures, but San Diego County will become the first region along the southern border to take it upon itself to cover the legal costs for illegal immigrants held by federal authorities.
And I really wish we had unlimited funds for everyone's representation in
in civil matters. And to me, this is a federal issue, and unfortunately, not the financial responsibility of a local county government.
Currently, there are close to 1,000 detainees held at the Otay Mesa Detention Center, representing about 60 countries of origin. County Supervisor Lawson Reamer says currently only 5% of detainees facing deportation will win their cases without a lawyer. According to a study by the American Immigration Council, detainees with lawyers are 4 times more likely to be released from detention.
Treadmill maker Peloton is recalling 125,000 treadmills. That includes its popular Tread and Tread Plus devices. Last month, a government agency issued a warning about the equipment and asked Peloton to do the recall. That was after 1 child died and 70 others were injured in Peloton accidents. Peloton initially refused, but today its CEO said sorry and said he shouldn't have pushed back against the request. Peloton shares are down over 14% today on the news. And coming up, an official document suggests the Chinese regime started developing a vaccine before admitting the dangers of the pandemic. The report says Wuhan's virus lab began working on it as early as January 5th last year. And a Chinese driver posts a video showcasing some baffling quality control issues in his new car. His ride was made by a luxury car brand often touted as the gold standard for China's auto industry. That and more on NTD News. An official report from China may have accidentally revealed something concerning. It appears to show Chinese authorities began vaccine development before they announced the virus is contagious. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more.
2 weeks before announcing that the new coronavirus is contagious last January, China seems to have already started developing corresponding vaccines. This, according to official Chinese reports. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, Central Commission for Discipline Inspection, published an article on its website. Its goal was to praise the party for its quick vaccine development. But some figures in it are triggering concerns. The article says on January 5th, 2020, the Chinese Academy of Sciences Wuhan Institute of Virology successfully isolated the new coronavirus strain. The research and development of the inactivated vaccine for this virus have since begun. But Chinese authorities did not admit that the new virus is capable of human-to-human transmission until 2 weeks later, on January 20th. Another official report also suggests that Chinese authorities started developing the vaccine very early. CCP mouthpiece Xinhua News published it last month. This article also sought to praise the party for its so-called efficiency in developing vaccines. The article quoted the CEO of a subsidiary of Chinese state-owned pharmaceutical company Sinopharm. The CEO said his company created a miracle by developing the vaccine in just 98 days. The Sinopharm vaccine was approved for clinical trials on April 12, 2020. So 98 days before that would be January 5th, 2020. That was when the vaccine project likely started. It was also when Chinese police cracked down on a number of whistleblower doctors in Wuhan. The doctors were warning about the dangers of the contagious virus, but authorities at the time accused them of spreading rumors. Among the whistleblowers was Dr. Li Wenliang. He later died of the virus himself. As of now, the worldwide CCP virus death toll is over 3 million. China's highly sought-after deal with the European Union will likely be suspended. This after China sanctioned numerous EU politicians and others. The vice president of the European Commission spoke to French news outlet AFP on Tuesday, saying that the EU-China Comprehensive Agreement on Investment is suspended in a sense. He blamed the possible suspension on China's sanctioning of 10 EU lawmakers, researchers, and institutions in March. The sanctions were a tit-for-tat response to Brussels' penalties on some Chinese officials, levied because of Beijing's human rights abuses against the Uyghur ethnic minority. The investment deal is a treaty for more commercial cooperation between China and the EU. Mainly under the deal, China would lower its restrictions and obstacles, allowing for fairer competition for European businesses looking to operate in China. China has actively sought to complete the EU deal. Signing the agreement would signal closer EU cooperation with China and a distancing from Brussels' main political ally, the US. A united front of Democratic allies standing together would present a huge problem for China. Beijing's rush to complete the deal is likely aimed at preventing closer US-EU cooperation. Under the deal, more European companies would do business in China. As these companies become more reliant on the Chinese market, they are more likely to agree to China's requests. Sometimes major companies even have the power to influence their domestic government's policies. If a company like this is reliant on China's market, it could prove very useful to Beijing.
A House Republican is reintroducing a bill to stop IP theft from the Chinese Communist Party. A poll found 1 in 3 American companies say that China has stolen their intellectual property within the last decade.
Colorado lawmaker Ken Buck reintroduced a bill on Tuesday that would deny export privileges of nations that steal American intellectual property. This bill is part of a broader measure to counter China's communist regime. Representative Buck says in a statement, "What Americans innovate, China steals. China's long history of intellectual property theft costs the United States billions of dollars each year. My bill combats China and other hostile nations' ability to steal our intellectual property and do untold harm to our economy." It's estimated that intellectual property theft costs the United States economy $600 billion annually. The Chinese regime is engaged in cyber attacks against American businesses, military installations, and government entities. A CNBC poll in 2019 found 1 in 3 American companies say that China has stolen their intellectual property within the last decade. In an interview on Sunday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the Biden administration has real concerns about the IP issue. According to John Dimmers, the head of the National Security Division at the Department of Justice, over 80% of all cases charged as economic espionage involve China, and 60% of all trade secret cases involve China.
A senior Chinese official was just appointed as one of the deputy directors general of the World Trade Organization. This amid growing concerns about Beijing's unfair trade practices and their influence in international organizations.
On Tuesday, the Director General announced China's Vice Minister of Commerce, Zhang Xiangchen, has been appointed as one of the 4 new Deputy Director Generals of the World Trade Organization. The other 3 Deputy Director Generals are from the United States, Costa Rica, and France. Zhang served as China's permanent representative of the World Trade Organization from 2017 to 2020, when the U.S.-China trade tension was high. A spokesperson with China's Ministry of Commerce said on Wednesday that Zhang's appointment confirms China's active and constructive role in the World Trade Organization over the years. But Professor Frank Xie from the University of South Carolina Aiken says there could be a conflict of interest.
So if this the Chinese national is pledging allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party instead of to the governing body of WTO, that could be a conflict of interest.
And he says this new appointment would likely help represent the regime's own interests.
We know that there are issues of Chinese government not in compliance with the WTO rule. So this Chinese Deputy General, I'm sure, is going to be a force representing the interests of the Chinese government. But I think also that's where the problem is.
China's influence and control of international organizations has been growing quickly. A recent congressional semi-annual report shows that Chinese nationals are serving as the heads of 4 key international organizations and many other top leadership positions across different United Nations agencies. Professor Xie sees this as a serious problem.
And all Chinese officials or Chinese nationals serving these organizations are mostly Communist Party members. And we know the Chinese Communist Party is in control, total control over the entire China.
Professor Xie believes the U.S. has to work with its democratic allies to stop Beijing's ever-growing influence in key international organizations.
One Chinese car brand, often praised by state media, may not be so luxurious after all. A Chinese driver posted a video online showing off a number of quality issues he discovered in the car, and some aren't so easy to overlook. NTD's Don Ma has more.
A Chinese luxury car branded high-end by Chinese state media is being slammed by one driver as industry garbage. The driver bought a Chinese Hongqi luxury car for about $70,000. All of the latest, most cutting-edge technology is reportedly built in. But here's what he had to say about it.
All its so-called high-tech electronic systems have extremely high failure rates. Are we Chinese people, Chinese drivers, so easily deceived?
The brand is hailed in China as the benchmark for domestic luxury cars. But this driver says he's only driven 1,800 miles in the new car, yet he's already experienced a long list of issues.
The car door handle doesn't work properly. The navigation system freezes. After you exit cruise control, if you don't restart the system, the car won't start again.
In the video, he also shows off the car's poorly constructed interior, including a seemingly major design flaw with the car's heated steering wheel feature.
The design for the steering wheel heating is baffling. It's cold on the left and right and heated on the top and bottom. Do people drive like this?
This driver is at least able to drive the car, but not all customers have been so lucky. There have been cases where the car broke down during test drives, with potential customers behind the wheel. The Hongqi brand is known as China's domestic Cadillac and has a long history. Its name roughly translates to red flag, a common symbol of the Chinese Communist Party. Top party leaders like Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping were even known to drive the brand's cars. Don Ma, NTD News.
Coming up, the Indian foreign minister pulled out of the face-to-face G7 meeting in London. This after 2 members of his delegation tested positive for the CCP virus. And the dispute between the UK and France over fishing rights continues to escalate. France now threatens to cut power to a British island over licenses to French fishermen.
In uncertain times, people rush to buy physical gold and silver. Strong, solid, dependable. Now is the time to buy from the trusted source, Westminster Mint. With 20 years experience, an A+ BBB rating, and our unconditional 30-day money-back guarantee, Westminster Mint is America's dealer. The best value in gold coins today is this newly released 2021 $50 American Gold Eagle coin, certified a perfect 70 by the world's largest grading service, NGC. At 1 full ounce of pure gold, this 2021 Gold Eagle is the biggest and most beautiful coin struck for circulation. Get yours now while you can at our exclusive low price. Call right now and get the Gold Eagle's perfect companion, the 2021 Silver Eagle, absolutely free with your purchase. With free shipping and a 30-day money-back guarantee, Westminster Mint is America's dealer. Hurry for your early release 2021 American Gold Eagle and free Silver Eagle before they're gone. Call now.
India's foreign minister pulled out of the face-to-face G7 meeting in London. This after 2 members of his delegation tested positive for the CCP virus.
The group of 7 foreign ministers meeting in London was hit by a COVID-19 scare on Wednesday. This is the first face-to-face high-level G7 meeting for more than 2 years. But on Wednesday, 2 delegation members of India's team tested positive. Indian Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar said he will have to join the meeting online instead of in person. He wrote on Twitter, "As a measure of abundant caution and also out of consideration for others, I decided to conduct my engagements in the virtual mode." Labour leader Keir Starmer questions the government's decision to hold the meeting in person.
I do think we need to ask questions about how this happened, if only to make sure that it's not repeated. It is a reminder about how vigilant we need to be about our borders. We've been challenging the government on this for some months.
But Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it was right for ministers to meet face to face.
I think it's very important to try to continue as much business as you can as a government. We have a very important relationship with India, with our G7 partners.
India is not a G7 member, but was invited by Britain to attend. The two countries agreed on Tuesday on plans for a quantum leap in bilateral relations over the next decade.
The dispute between the UK and France over fishing rights escalates. France now threatens to cut power to Jersey over licenses to French fishermen.
France is threatening to cut off electricity to Jersey amid an escalating row over fishing rights in UK waters. The Channel Island is dependent on France for 95% of its electricity. French Maritime Minister Annick Girardin told the French Parliament on Tuesday that France is ready to enact retaliatory measures following unacceptable new rules for French fishing vessels. Girardin said, "I'm sorry it has come to this, but we will do so if we have to." French fishermen have complained that it's hard to get a license to fish in UK waters. Last week, Jersey issued 41 licenses to French vessels. France claims some rules for fishing off the Channel Islands were not part of the UK's Brexit agreement with the EU. The UK government says Jersey is responsible for its own territorial waters, and a Jersey minister said on Wednesday the dispute is based on a misunderstanding over the licensing system. Britain's trade deal with the EU following Brexit allows the bloc's fishermen to keep fishing deep into British waters, but only once they have received a license. Fishing rights have been a source of dispute between France and the UK for months. Fishermen in northern France say their livelihoods depend on access to British waters, and British fishermen depend on access to the EU market to sell their product. Last month, French trawlermen, angered by the slow issuance of licenses, blocked lorries carrying UK fish as they arrived in France.
Debates and opinions over energy sources can get heated, but as the demand for coal has continued to decline, we often forget about the people who fueled our nation for centuries. Coal miners. The coal mining tradition formed a culture in America's Northeast that has been devastated by the push for renewable energy and policies that have sent American jobs overseas. And the future of this culture and its traditions hang in the balance. NTD's Kay Rubacek has the story.
All of the safety regulations and laws that we have are written in their blood.
This does not look like coal that I know.
These cars are the biggest thing that fits in there.
Shiny.
Any leader that doesn't have a regret about something is probably not being honest.
And where's it going?
That's the million-dollar question.
This is almost like the race to the moon.
Don't give up on us yet. Just please don't throw us away.
Coal. We've used it for heat since the time of the caveman, and for centuries its power has fueled this nation. But as we toured the coal fields of America's Northeast, we found that the industry itself created a unique culture among the brave people who dare to walk beneath the earth to power our lives above the ground. Where is this culture now as the demand for coal declines? And more importantly, where is its future?
Because of men like them, I enjoy the safety benefits that I have today. It's a shame to say it, but all of the safety regulations and laws that we have today are written in their blood. My children get to enjoy me coming home every day because they didn't. And there's monuments like this all over the place, and I think the same about them every time.
Anthracite is the purest thing you can get in a solid fuel. Drill, blast, load. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the basic minimum.
And is that different to bituminous?
Bituminous mining used to be the same process. They've moved beyond drill, blast, load.
Okay.
Now just go and grind it out and just keep going. It's constant. They were able to modernize versus where here in the anthracite region, it was deemed too expensive. The machines couldn't handle the pitch of the veins, so it didn't really work out.
I'll show you my favorite picture of me right here. So I'm like staring directly in the eyes of the cop. I don't know how many times I got arrested here, but I've lost count.
You've worn the hard hat and you also worn the suit. How does it affect you personally, understanding both sides?
I'm a coal miner first. My father was a coal miner. Both my grandfathers were killed in the mines. I never had the chance to meet them. My family made their way here from Wales. They were miners before they came here.
They were miners in Wales?
Oh, yes. Once you're a coal miner, every ounce of you is driven by what you know about mining coal.
The full Life and Times episode broadcasts every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on NTD TV and is available to watch online on demand on Epoch TV. And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.